Hello and welcome to our second video on Pixlr. We're going to do a few more kind of advanced stuff today in this lesson. Again, just doing some review from last class and maybe some new stuff as well. So we're going to start off with the layers panel over here. Remember, we want to unlock the background layer first. So we're just going to go ahead and double click on this lock layer. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. Always a good idea to have a duplicate layer. Just in case you mess up the first one, you can go ahead and just right click on it. And you see your first choice is duplicate layer. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on the layer name just to rename it. Okay, so I'm going to call this editable, and I'll just call this original background. Okay, so then I'm going to work off of that one. Okay, so always a good practice to go ahead and do that. So what we did last time was working with some of these adjustments. Okay, so I can go ahead and go to adjustment. You'll notice there's a few different options for me to work with. Hue and saturation, right, we worked with, and also some of these other kind of sort of like filters like sepia, old photo. You can kind of just try some of those things out. But hue and saturation is kind of like, you know, a few things all in one. So if you have kind of a dark photo, you can play around with the lightness, okay, and then hue, you can change the color. Saturation, you can add on whatever color is going to be more vibrant. So if I just change the saturation, I'm going to make it a little bit more of the color that I'm working with. Less saturation makes it black and white. This isn't a great candidate for that, just because there's not a ton of colors to work with to begin with. Hue, right, so you notice what that does. I can change the color of things just like that. Okay, so just remember that kind of stuff if you want. We did that in class. Changing the color of the trees, and also brightening some things up as well. Right, so you see this is going to kind of do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, and you'll notice also under adjustment there is levels. All right, and levels are all about the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. So when you're working with these, if you want to actually kind of really make some nice adjustments, you can play with, see, the midtones are getting affected here. The highlights are getting affected here. See that? And the shadows are getting affected here. Okay, so you could really kind of play around with those on a lot of levels. So if I cancel this, and if I go to something like, let me go over to here and I'll just say adjustments, and I'll say, let's just say like old photo, for example. I do that, and I want to kind of go to another level with that. I'm going to go to, again, levels. I'm just going to bring up the shadows a little bit. You get kind of an interesting sort of chrome look to this, you know. So it just kind of adds a little more kind of crispness to it. Okay, so you know, you play around with all these things, but I just want you to kind of remember that these things do in fact exist. Now the other thing that we worked with, just to give you a nice quick little reminder, is again we work with these layer styles. All right, so just don't forget about those. Remember, we did these with drop shadow, inner shadow, bevel, outer glow. That's in the last video. So go ahead and watch that video again. I'm not going to do it on this one, but you can put it onto text. We made a little, what we call a stroke or an outline around our text. So lots of different things you can do there. We can add a drop shadow for some kind of visual interest. So just check these out. Don't forget that we can do that. All right, so let me go ahead and cancel out of this. And we also worked with filters. All right, so filters, all right, there's a zillion of them to work with. You can make something blurry, and you can put a little vignette around things, right? The ones that we worked with were the famous kaleidoscope. Okay, we did Hope, which is that kind of Obama-looking thing. Art posters sort of similar to that. So I'll show you a few different examples of that. So the kaleidoscope, that was everybody's kind of favorite. Notice you can do something like that. Really, really cool, right? And you can play around with the size of it, right? See what I'm doing? I'm just dragging this one across, and you get more or less of a kaleidoscope to get really kind of interesting, trippy looking things here. Okay, and you can also adjust, okay, well, my vertical will be more or less than my horizontal, you know, kind of shift that over and just kind of get whatever you want. Okay, now if you had some color, this would be even more interesting. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, and it reverts back to what it was. Some other filters we did the water swirl. Okay, and that adds that to that, you know, and then you say, okay, well, how much do I want to do? Okay, the size of it, you know, so I mean, again, I'm not choosing anything too creative right now just for the sake of the video, but you'll see all the stuff that you can do if you want to. Change that to horizontal, whatever you want to do. Okay. All right, so really I would just experiment with a lot of these filters and just kind of see what comes up. But remember, all right, whatever I'm doing on here, I can always, let me just go ahead and do one more filter so you can see what I'm about to talk about. I'll go back to this hope and see this is like the Obama thing. All right, now if I want to come back to this one again, I could just click on the check mark and see I can still see that it's sitting here underneath. Okay? All right, now what I'm going to do next is something I did not do in class, and I'm going to give you a little preview for next week, and hopefully you can try this out so you're prepared for next week, is I'm going to do something next to our layer style, and this is called a mask, okay, a layer mask. My goal for this is I want to make this have rounded rectangles, right? So I want to actually make this so this is a rounded square rather than a hard edge corner. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to put a mask on top of this, okay? And you see what happens here. So basically let's cover this up entirely. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a black rounded rectangle on top of this, which is essentially poking a hole through this white. So understand what's happening here. This is covering it, and I'm going to poke a hole with the shapes. Remember we were working with shapes last time. This is another good review. So we went over here, remember we were drawing out that kind of like sun-like thing. So we go over to here, and these are going to be my different types of shapes I can work with. This is going to be my color, and I'm just going to choose black. And I don't even really need a border, but it's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one, which is a rounded rectangle, because that's the one I want to get. And I'm going to choose the radius to be like 30 or something like that. The radius, what does that mean? It's how round the corners are going to be. Watch. So I'm going to click and drag and let go. And now what I've done is I've created a rounded rectangle for that. I'm going to go and undo. So I'm going to go to Edit, Undo. And this time I'm going to make the radius even more round. I'll kind of go a little more extreme so you can see the difference. I'll do something like that. And you see, now I got nice rounded corners on this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and undo again. And let's say I want to do a circle. So I want to have my image to be a circle, or an oval in this case. See, now you get the drift. So really, really cool stuff. All right, and then I can go ahead and save this, or I can crop it, do whatever I want to do. I can even add on some other layer styles to this if I want to, so you can really kind of have a lot of fun with it, right? And notice this outer glow appears on the outside, which is creating an outline. Let me make it a little bit kind of thicker so you can see it. See that? Bring down and up the hardness, you see? So you can really be really creative with it. And of course I can change the color. All right, I'll go to here. This should be a good review for you also in terms of working with color. I'll make this red, match some of the stuff in there. Click OK. And see, now you got a very, very different image than what we started with. Okay, so try that out. Try with different shapes if you want to. And I look forward to seeing you next week.